You're probably familiar with the story of Adam and Eve. You know, the apple, the rib, and could it be Satan? Those are just 3 examples of items of debate about the first humans. Genesis appears to suggest that Eden was an actual place on Earth. Its potential location is vague and still a matter of debate. What we do know from the scriptures is that the Garden of Eden was planted in the east, with the Bible naming 4 rivers that flow into the region from a single head, including the Euphrates and Tigris, referred to in the scriptures as Hiddekel. Though these streams both exist in the Middle East, modern-day Iraq for the most part, there is no position on Earth in which they meet as described in the story. Also, east is a relative direction. Yes, they are east of modern-day Israel, but they are also west of a lot of places. John Calvin, the French theologian, spent a lot of time trying to find Eden. One complication that Calvin goes into is the fact that the Great Flood, as in the story of Noah, would have overhauled the face of the planet. Indeed, it likely changed the land to such a degree that it no longer resembles how it did during Adam and Eve's spell in Eden, but the Bible does not directly address the scenario. Want to hear about a place seldomly mentioned as a location? Armenia. When I said Iraq for the most part for the Tigris and Euphrates, that's because the headwaters are actually in Turkey. But because rivers are complicated, there are a few researchers that want to push the starting point further north into Armenia. It's just another twist to the location puzzle.
Out of dust, God creates the first man, Adam.
So the Adam creation story is pretty clear-cut. Eve? Not so much. The idea that Adam's wife Eve was created from one of Adam's ribs after God put him to sleep is one of the most memorable images in the Bible's creation story. The tale is so well known in the West that it is likely responsible for the myth that men have fewer ribs than women. Both sexes typically have 12 pairs. Catholic theologians have claimed that Eve being made from Adam's rib rather than the dust of the earth like Adam himself is a symbolic mirroring of the Holy Trinity. In Judaism, the selection of the rib, rooted linguistically to wisdom in Hebrew, is said to suggest modesty, in that it is found in a, quote, concealed place within man. So what does concealed within a man mean? Aren't all bones like that? There's a new theory out there that suggests that the Bible may in fact have been referring to the baculum, a bone found in the, nether regions of most male mammals, but not as humans. Before you dismiss this as just naughty talk, the basis for this theory has to do with the original Hebrew translation. In short, the theory says that the word used for rib should really mean something that is one of the lateral limbs or branches or appendages. If you've never heard that theory, it's because a controversial theory has failed to become mainstream. Adam and Eve's downfall and banishment from the Garden of Eden is commonly said to be the root of humanity's separation from God and the origin of the difficulties that plague human life. Their loss of earthly paradise and the immediacy of God's love is precipitated by their fateful meeting with a serpent, who tricked Eve into eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's that cunning serpent that's led to a theory that the serpent was Satan in disguise, whose objective is the disempowerment of heaven and then, by default, the devalue of human souls. The whole Satan/serpent thing's been around for a very long time, but it really took off when John Milton penned Paradise Lost in the 1600s. But way back before Paradise Lost, people were already poo-pooing the Satan theory. Jewish philosopher Philo, who lived around 2,000 years ago, claimed that the serpent and Satan were not connected, and modern theologians don't believe the serpent was special in being able to speak. All animals in Eden could. Ah, yes, of course.
Of course!
Two of the most miraculous objects to appear in the book of Genesis are the Tree of Life and the Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil. All of humanity's woes, the story suggests, can be attributed to Adam and Eve's thoughtless bite of the forbidden apple. But what evidence do we have that the fruit was actually an apple, as is typically rendered in artworks depicting Adam and Eve? Right now, we have none. The Bible refers only to forbidden fruit, going into no greater detail. In Hebrew, Genesis uses the generic word for fruit, peri. Down the centuries, scholars have suggested various fruits as the fateful piece, including citron, grapes, and figs. However, the Latin translation of the Hebrew word peri is malum, which has historically been translated into English as apple, once a generic word for seed-bearing fleshy fruit. This is likely the origin of the apple in artwork depicting Adam and Eve. One of the more semi-popular theories is that it was a pomegranate. You know where pomegranates grow? Well, a lot of places, but also Armenia. Just saying. According to the Bible, all human beings share common ancestors in Adam and Eve. Having been banished from the Garden of Eden, they were said to have set forth into the harsh world, with cherubim with flaming swords preventing them from ever entering the garden again.
Now get out of here!
In exile, the guilt-ridden Adam and Eve were condemned to a life of work and toil and had to conceive children through the painful process of birth. The Bible tells the story of their 2 sons, Cain and Abel. The latter is brutally murdered by his brother, and of a third son, Seth. All but Abel had children of their own, and the scripture briefly notes that Adam and Eve also had daughters. None of them are named in the mainstream biblical canon though, and details of their lives and whether they survived to have children of their own is missing from Genesis. In case you're wondering who humans are all related to Adam and Eve through, the answer is Seth. Genesis 5 puts Noah 9 generations from Adam via Seth. Since a great flood wiped everyone else out, the biblical line runs directly through that forgotten son.